Proving Exterior Angle Inequality Theorem, Hinge Theorem, and its Converse. Yan ang pag-uusapan natin ngayon dito sa ating matsayang talakayan. Kaya, stay tuned! Hello grade 8 learners! Welcome back to our channel. For today, we are going to discuss Proving Exterior Angle Inequality Theorem, Hinge Theorem, and its Converse. With the learning competency, proves inequalities in a triangle. In the previous video, we already have proven Triangle Inequality Theorem 1, Triangle Inequality Theorem 2, and Triangle Inequality Theorem 3. So for today, we are going to discuss Exterior Angle Inequality Theorem, Hinge Theorem, and the converse of Hinge Theorem. So let's begin with Exterior Inequality Theorem. So it states that an exterior angle of a triangle is greater than any of its remote interior angles. So let's say we have our given in triangle LMN with exterior angle L and P. So we are going to prove that angle L and P is greater than the measure of the angle MLN. Now let's prove that the measure of angle LNP is greater than the measure of MLN. This is by constructing the following. So first, we're going to construct midpoint Q on LN. Okay, in such a way that LQ is congruent to NQ. And then another is to construct MR or segment MR, that is through point Q. Okay, in such a way that MQ is congruent to QR. Okay, then we are going to connect NR for us to have a triangle. And name the angles formed. We have their angle 1, angle 2, angle 3, and angle 4. Now, let's complete the two-column proof. So for statement number 1, what can you say about LQ and NQ and MQ and QR? Okay, correct. LQ is congruent to NQ and MQ is congruent to QR. And the reason is by construction, because we constructed these segments. Okay, now what relationship exists between angle 3 and angle 4? What can you say about angle 3 and 4? Okay, correct. So they are congruent. Why? Because they are vertical angles. And vertical angles are congruent. Okay, so based on statement 1 and 2, so relate two triangles from the illustration. Ano ang masasabi natin sa dalawang triangles na na-form? Okay, correct. So triangle LQM is now congruent to triangle NQR. Okay, so bakit sila congruent? Okay, tingnan natin. We have there the markings and angle 3 and 4 are congruent. So therefore, they are congruent because of SAS triangle congruence postulate. Okay, now, based on statement number 3, so angle MLN is now congruent to what? Okay, correct. MLN is now congruent to angle 1. Okay, and the reason is they are the corresponding parts of the congruent triangle. So, corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Now, based on the illustration, pansinin natin yung illustration. Angle LNP is congruent to what? LNP. Okay, correct. LNP is now congruent to the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2. Nasaan ba yung LNP natin? So ito, Yan. Pag pinagsama natin yung angle 1 at angle 2, so we have angle L and P. And of course, dahil pinagsama natin yung dalawang angles, and that is by addition postulate or angle addition postulate. Now, for number 6, based on statement number 5. So, balikan natin yung statement number 5. Okay, so, measure of L and P or angle L and P is greater than angle 1. Okay? So, bakit yan ang statement natin? Ano ulit ang reason natin? If we have L and P is equal to angle 1 plus angle 2, then we have the conclusion, angle L and P is greater than angle 1. That's correct. That is the comparison property of inequality, wherein if x is equal to y plus z and z is greater than 0, then x is greater than y. So parang ganito lang yon. If angle L and P is equal to angle 1 plus angle 2, and we have angle 2 is not equal to 0, then we can say now that angle L and P is greater than angle 1. So that is by comparison property of inequality. Okay, now, so we are going to use statement number 4 and number 6. So we come up with our statement that angle L and P is greater than angle MLN. Why? Kasi from statement number 4, MLN is congruent to 1. And from statement number 6, L and P is greater than 1. So sinubstitute lang natin yung angle MLN sa angle 1. Okay? And the reason is by substitution property. Let's proceed to Hinge Theorem or SAS Inequality Theorem. It states that if two sides of one triangle are congruent to the two sides of another triangle, and the included angle of one triangle is larger than the included angle of the other triangle, then the third side of one triangle is longer than the third side of the other triangle. So let's consider our given. So we have triangle CAN and triangle LYT, wherein CA is congruent to LY and AN is congruent to YT. Okay, another is the measure of angle A, this one, is greater than the measure of angle Y. So we are now going to prove that this CN is congruent to side LT. To prove that, we need to construct AW such that AW is congruent to AN and congruent to YT. So AW is between AC and AN. So we have here CAW or angle CAW is now congruent to angle LYT. Okay, consequently, we have here triangle CAW and triangle WAN. But CAW is now congruent to triangle LYT by what postulate? So look at the markings. Okay, so since AW is congruent to YT, so we can say now that triangle CAW is congruent to triangle LYT by SAS congruence postulate. Okay, we can also say that since CAW is congruent to LYT, so triangle LYT, so we can say that yung CW will also be congruent to LT. Okay, so nasaan yun ito? Magiging congruent na rin sila because these are already the corresponding parts of the congruent triangles. Okay, now, so let us continue by constructing an angle bisector. So we will construct an angle bisector at angle NAW, which is bisector AH. Okay, wherein H is on CN and we have here NAH, this is NAH, congruent to WH since AH is an angle bisector. So the two angles formed will now be congruent. Now, consequently, we can say now that triangle NAH is congruent to triangle WAH by SAS triangle congruence postulate. Why? Because now AH is congruent to AH by reflexive property. And then yung AW is congruent to AN. Okay? Mula sa construction natin sa number 1. So we can say now that WH is congruent to HN by corresponding parts of congruent triangles. So let us now complete our statement and reason. Okay? So from the given illustration, we can say that CN, itong CN dito, is equal to CH plus HN. So when we combine CH and HN, that is equivalent to CN. Okay, kaya lagay natin on the first statement, CN is equal to CH plus HN. And that is by segment addition postulate. Okay, now, since we have here HN congruent to WH, so we can say that CN is equal to CH plus WH. Okay, so that is by substitution property of inequality. Since yung HN at saka yung WH ay congruent, so sinubstitute lang natin yung HN, okay, yung binalitan lang natin yung HN ng WH. Okay? And now, on statement number 3, we can say that in triangle CHW, okay, nasaan yung triangle CHW? Itong buong ito. Triangle CHW. Yan. Is now, in triangle CHW, makikita natin na yung CH, itong CH na to, pag pinagsama natin yung CH at saka yung WH, which is greater than CW, wherein CH are the two CH and WH are the two sides of triangle CHW, which is greater than the third side CW. Okay? And the reason is by triangle inequality theorem number 1. Okay, so gamitin natin ngayon yung statement number 2 and statement number 3. Okay, so sa statement number 2 and statement number 3, we can now write the statement CN is greater than CW. Okay? So what is the reason behind this? By substitution property. Okay? Kasi from statement number 2, ang CN ay CH plus WH. Ito yung CH plus WH. Since ito ay equal sa CN, papalitan lang natin ito ng CN. Kaya naging CN is greater than CW. So, nag-substitute lang tayo. And now, using our statement in construction, number 1 and statement number 4, we can now say that CN is greater than LP. And that is by substitution property of inequality. Let's now proceed to converse of Hinge Theorem or the SSS inequality theorem. It states that if the two sides of one triangle are congruent to the two sides of another triangle, and the third side of the first triangle is greater than the third side of the second triangle, then the included angle of the first triangle is larger than the included angle of the second triangle. Okay, so let's have our example with the given triangle ODG and triangle LUV, wherein OD is congruent to LU and then DG is congruent to UV, but we have OG is greater than LV. So we are going to prove that the measure of angle D is greater than the measure of angle U. So to prove that, we are going to use indirect proof, assuming that the measure of angle D is not greater than the measure of angle U. So, kinontradict lang natin yung dalawang angles na ipoprove natin. Okay? Let us now complete our two-column proof. So, first statement, ilalagay natin yung ating assumption. Okay, since the assumption natin, angle D is not greater than angle U, so lalagay natin sa statement, it can be equal or less than. Okay, so from the assumption, sabi niya not greater than. Kung not greater than, so we can have congruent or less than. Okay, so gamitin natin sa statement number 2, consider muna natin itong isang assumption natin. If angle D is congruent to angle U, kapag naging congruent yung angle D at angle U, ano ang mangyayari sa triangle ODG? Okay, correct. So, based on the congruent parts, we can say that triangle ODG is congruent to triangle LUV by SAS congruence postulate. Kasi sabi natin, itong OD congruent to LU, DG congruent sa UV, and the included angle D congruent sa angle U. Kaya meron tayong SAS congruence postulate. Okay, kapag naging congruent ang angle D at angle U, ano naman ang masasabi nyo ngayon sa OG at LV? Okay, correct. So, they will now be congruent. Okay, bakit sila naging congruent? Because they are already the corresponding parts of congruent triangles. Okay, now, what can you say about our assumption? The assumption angle D congruent to angle U is false. Bakit siya naging false? Kasi if in case na naging congruent yung angle D at angle U, magiging congruent yung OG at LV, which contradicts our given na OG greater than LV. Okay, now, dahil yun ay false, let us try the other assumption. Ito naman ngayon. Consider natin angle D less than angle U. Kung naging less than ang angle D sa angle U, opposite side of angle D is less than the opposite side of angle U. So, lalagay natin ngayon that OG is less than LV. Okay? And that shows the Hinge Theorem or SAS Inequality Theorem. Now, kung naging less than ang OG at LV, or less than yung OG sa LV, we can say that our assumption na angle D less than angle U is false. Bakit? Kasi kung ito ay naging less than, yung kanilang opposite side ay magiging less than din. Okay? Which contradicts that OG is greater than LV. So, kasi given natin OG greater than LV. Pero, ang lumalabas kapag ginamit natin yung assumption natin, magiging OG less than LV. It contradicts the given. That's why it's false. Kaya, we can conclude that angle D is greater than angle U. So, this is a true statement. Why? Because the assumption that angle D is not greater than angle U is proven to be false. Ayan o, na-prove natin na naging false sila. Let's have our example. So you are going to write the statements supported by the reasons on the right side of the two-column proof. So ang given natin, HO is congruent to EP, and the measure of angle OHP is greater than the measure of angle EPH. So you are going to prove now that OP is greater than EH. So on the first statement, ang reason natin, of course, gamitin natin yung unang given dahil nakalagay dyan given. So lalagay natin, HO is congruent to EP. Okay? So in the figure, tingnan natin kung ano yung maaari natin gamitan ng reflexive property. Okay, correct. HP is congruent to HP. And then, we are going to use the other given. The measure of angle OHP is greater than the measure of angle EPH. Now, we can say that OP is greater than EH by Hinge Theorem. And that's for today, guys. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and share. Again, this is Teacher Dali na nagsasabing, practice makes perfect. Thanks for watching!